we're recording now. Okay, all right. Welcome everyone to our weekday text gathering. Today is a review in the Circle's reading calendar. So rather than do a review, we thought it would be fun to have an open Q&A. Hopefully you have all come with your questions. Hi, Andreas. And we continue to have many new faces joining us for these gatherings. So just a reminder once again that you can find the access links, the recordings, the handouts, and whatnot at circleofa.org/text gathering. As always, please feel free to use that link to invite anyone that you feel could benefit from these discussions. They are free and open to all. I know I have to continue to do this reminder because I keep getting emails about which version we're using. My very ratty, sorry, I have a cleaner one, I have a better one. This is just
hold that one up.
Yeah. We use the Circle of Atonement Complete and Annotated Edition of A Course in Miracles, which you can find at Amazon, and you can also find at circleofa.org. If you cannot get a copy of the book due to financial hardship, please send us an email at info@circleofa.org, and we will be happy to help. As I've said before, thanks to many generous donors to the Circle, we do have extra copies of the CE that we are happy to ship to anyone who needs it. And we do even cover the shipping. We have some wonderful donors here at the Circle who help out with that and support all of our students around the world. So I guess with that, any other housekeeping, Robert, that you can think of before we get started?
I can't think of any.
Okay. All right. Well, wherever.
There's no need to point the way to the bathrooms, that's for sure.
I know. Well, that's true. Wherever you are in the world, I invite you to take a deep collective breath together. And join me in bowing your heads in prayer. Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together today as loving friends and mighty companions on this remarkable path of light. We surrender this gathering to you and ask that it serve your purposes and be blessed by you. Dear God, we ask that you remove in us any blocks to the awareness of your presence, and may we learn to think like you so that we may be led to the highest vision of ourselves and one another. We ask that you use this time to plant within us the seeds of grace, that we may emerge from this experience more humble, peaceful, and loving beings. Please purify our hearts that we may hold your peace, and join with us so our hands are strong enough to give it. Please help us help each other. We ask all of this so that we may be a source of miracles within this group and within the world. And so it is. Amen.
Okay, I guess it's over to me.
Over to you. And because this is a Q&A, please put your Q&A, you put your questions in the Q&A box. You're also welcome to include them in the chat. I do monitor both.
And we didn't give you a lot of warning about this being a Q&A, so I'd like to just take, half a minute or so of silence so you can reflect on what questions you've had. They can be longstanding questions about course theory. They can be about how to apply the course. They can be about how we apply the course in the current world situation. Anything related to A Course in Miracles. They don't need to be about the sections that we've just been covering, for instance. So let's just take, a little bit of time here. If you want to reflect, you might want to write down your question, and then we'll go ahead and proceed. Okay? All right. So, Emily, we're having them submit their questions how?
You can submit their questions in the Q&A box.
Okay.
Typically, the chat is more for conversation, and the Q&A box is questions. It's just
Okay.
easier for me to filter
Okay.
through.
If we get a ton, I guess you'll just have to
Toggle.
exercise your best sense of which questions are maybe going to speak to the most people.
Yeah. So that's not a problem yet. You guys are pretty quiet. Are. So we do have one question here from Joan, sorry. It says, are there any opportunities to participate in any course-based prayer circles that you know of?
Well, we have a prayer circle at the Circle of Atonement. It's not been very active of late, but we have plans to kind of get it back online. So I guess that's not for this very moment. We need to go through a process of getting that back up and visible again. But
If
why
anyone
don't
knows
you?
of any, please put them
Well,
in the chat.
and we can pass your information along. So write Emily or I, and we can pass it along to the leader of the prayer team.
Right. And someone says chapter 5 talks about thought disorder and how our ego tries to order our thoughts. I'm unclear about what ordering our thoughts means. Yeah, that's a good
Oh,
question. We had a conversation on that
yeah.
recently.
Yeah. Well, I think that it helps to think about what disordered thinking is. Like if you think what's disordered thinking, and you probably have a picture of somebody who, is engaging in disordered thinking where the thoughts don't fit together with each other, where one thought's not in its proper place in relation to other thoughts. I think that helps us understand what thought ordering is. It's just where your thoughts are all in their proper place. They relate to each other correctly. They're in just their overall right place. It's almost like a house, right? We know what a disorderly house is. An orderly house is where everything is in its right place. It's not chaos, it's order. So I think that's what that means. I mean, I thought about that because Emily and I talked about that when we covered that section. I think it's as simple as your mind is like an orderly house where everything is in its right place. If
But
you
marching
know,
towards a loving perspective.
I don't know how everything can be in its right place without it being loving. Um, but I think the idea of ordered thoughts particularly has to do with thoughts that make sense with each other. So we can imagine a lot of thoughts that maybe individually might make a certain sense, but when put together don't. So for instance, I have to go to the store later today. I also have to work on a certain project today. We're preparing discussion guides for study groups. Well, for me to say, of course I need to prepare those discussion guides. After all, I am going to the store later. They're totally separate things. Why place them together like that? So making one the purpose or the reason for the other would be having thoughts that are out of order. They're not in their proper place.
Okay. The questions are really pouring in now. So we're
I
going to
kind of thought that would
have to
happen.
be a bit of a speed round with these.
Okay, I'll try to be more concise.
Okay, so and the questions are often really deep, though. So I know this puts you in a bit of a bind, but we'll do what
Okay.
we can. So
Okay.
Lynn says, how does the course relate to our current situation? We've been talking about this a lot
We've
in
been
gathering.
talking about that. I think that everything you read in the course to one degree or another relates because the course is made for a world that seems to attack us and hold dangers and cause fear. To the closest thing that I've found that's actually from the author of the course, excuse me, to Helen Schuckman, is the flu shot guidance for Bill. And we've put that out there publicly, and we did one of our Sunday gatherings on that. But that was where the author of the course came closest to addressing something somewhat analogous to our situation.
And
Can we
that,
point them there on
yeah,
the website?
it's circleofa.org/coronavirus, but just quickly, the guidance was to don't look at the situation with fear, listen to the experts, be miracle workers, and I'm missing one.
And ask for guidance
Ask for guidance.
and discuss the issue frankly, very frankly.
Yeah.
So, which is part of, not just blowing it off.
And we just recorded a podcast on this topic yesterday, and that will release on Monday. And it's called Where Can I Go for Protection? And so I would encourage you to be on the lookout for that on Monday as well.
It's about the topic of protection in the course, but we've got quite a slant on how this applies to now.
Okay, we're not going to get through all these questions. Jill says, my question is in regards to creating what you defend against. How do we balance taking recommended earthly precautions against the coronavirus, for example, without enacting this principle? In other words, by taking precautions, are we creating what we are trying to protect ourselves from? It's a good question for this time.
Yeah, I would say, well, going back to the flu shot guidance for Bill, don't let fear enter into it and follow your guidance. Your guidance knows, if you're able to connect with real guidance, it knows, where you have realized your true invulnerability and where you just need to act like a human, like the rest of us, and take, we all protect ourselves from rain and from cold and from all kinds of physical things out there. I think if we were truly advanced, we wouldn't really need that protection, but we're not there. And your guidance is what knows where you are and what's appropriate for you. So I would say just lean on that. Ask within when you face decisions, but not in a spirit of fear. Remember, focus on your true invulnerability as the course teaches it, that your being can't be assailed. And while remembering that, just lean on your guidance and do what it tells you to do. And in the case of Bill, I mean, Jesus said he sent this medical expert to be the messenger through which his answer reached Bill. So we should take the expert seriously, of course.
Yeah, and we have, again, a lot of new people here, so I know I'm always saying this, but the perennial course question is, how do I tell real guidance from my ego or my fear that's talking? And Robert has some excellent resources for this. If you go to circleofa.org and click on the articles tab at the top, you can do a search and search for guidance, and there's all kinds of articles there about how to distinguish.
And you can search from the homepage too now.
Yeah, you can do. So,
Yeah.
okay. So Mustafa's question is, this is a question that makes my heart race. If the ego is not real, what makes me believe that it's real? Bless you.
Well, from the course's standpoint, we just have the power to believe what we want. So at some time in the distant past, we chose to believe in the ego, and we've chosen to support that belief since then. But the power to believe what we want enables us to believe that we're an ego and enables us to withdraw that belief both. So I don't think it's so essential to go back into, deep metaphysical fine points about how that belief could arise in the first place. The course's main answer, aside from it didn't really arise, is look, you have that power. You have the power to swing your mind towards heaven or to swing your mind away, and you exercised it. But the point is, you're still exercising it.
Yeah, it's not asking how it came, but looking at how you're choosing it right now.
And the choosing of it right now is how it came. That's an example you're doing now in choosing to support your ego, what you did in the beginning in choosing to originate it.
Jesus, he's so slick. All right. Were you going to say something else about that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Peggy says, I have always been unsure about the quote, some of your greatest advances you have judged as failures, and some of your greatest failures you have judged as successes.
Well, I think it's kind of human nature, right? One of the interesting things, there's echoes of that in your death experiences. People have their life review, and the point of the life review, I'm a big believer in those experiences. The point of the life review is you kind of learn what your real priorities are. or should have been. What are the true priorities in life? And people often say, I had no idea what was truly important and no idea what didn't matter. So there was one guy, he was a young man in the army when he had his NDE, and he's having a conversation with Jesus. That was his experience, at least. And he was like, hey, I was an Eagle Scout. What about that? And Jesus's response was, well, that was for you, basically for your ego. So he considered that one of his greatest gains, but it wasn't. So if you just have the idea that we have our priorities all mixed up, our values all mixed up, then of course we're going to count things as gains that might be the opposite and vice versa.
And a lot of the things that we consider gains in this world, like achieving goals of career success or whatnot, are just ego gratification. So, from a metaphysical perspective, they would be considered failures, whereas a genuine kindness to another would be considered a huge success.
Yeah, very often in those life reviews I was mentioning, people have a memory of perhaps the most important thing they ever did, and it's invariably some ordinary moment of kindness where they really meant it, and quite often they had completely forgotten that it ever happened, which
Mm-hmm.
just shows where the priorities are, right? You forget things that you consider unimportant.
Right. Okay. But those things are oftentimes the most loving. Savina says many people are experiencing financial hardship now with a lot of uncertainty about where the money for food is coming from. Where can we find in the Course how to trust that we will be taken care of by God?
Well, the Course doesn't deal with this very much. There is a section in chapter 13 in the text, I think it's section 8 in the CE, that we've entitled Leaving Your Needs to Him. And it basically just says you shouldn't be the one to decide what you need in terms of possessions, that should be left to the Holy Spirit, and He'll supply your needs with no emphasis at all upon them. He supplies them, but not in such a way as to make them a big deal. That doesn't really give us a lot of guidance. My own personal attitude is I know that I'm taken care of, and I need to keep my priorities in this time right. I'm not here just to protect myself. I'm here to serve, and I need to keep checking with my guidance. And if if my mind and heart are in the right place, more or less, if I keep checking with guidance, if I trust I'm in God's hands, keep putting things in His hands, then I feel like I've got Teflon coating.
Mm.
We'll see.
Yeah, there's so much to say on that topic, and I know
Yeah,
people are really feeling that right now.
it's a huge issue. And I think many, many of us are facing massive issues on that level. I am, the circle is. Um, but I think it's absolutely valid to trust God, trust the Holy Spirit, to follow our guidance, and to say, what's my role right now?
Okay. Uh, Someone says there's many different kinds of meditation. Is there one that seems most compatible with the Course? I can just take this really quickly because we have 30 some odd questions.
Oh my gosh.
There's three
That are taught
and
in the
that are
Course.
taught in the Course. And if you go to the Circle site under resources, you can click on podcasts, and we do a whole podcast on meditation in A Course in Miracles. And I think we actually went through all three kinds,
Did
didn't we?
we?
Maybe we didn't,
I
but
thought we
you
did
could
a Name of God meditation podcast.
start there, or also go to the articles tab and search for meditation in the search under library, and you can find a lot of information.
And what you want is not, let's find something compatible with the Course. If the Course is your path, you want to follow meditation techniques taught in the Course, by the Course.
And they're all over the place, and many students aren't aware that meditation is even part of the Course. So, okay. So, John says, what is the other chapter that talks about the Holy Spirit's use of judgment? Do you know offhand?
The Holy Spirit's use of judgment. Well, there's little bits on that. Is there like a whole section about that? I don't know.
Yeah, it feels peppered throughout. Okay. Um, Denny says, John, you can email us. But Denny says, how to accept the current world COVID situation and remain at peace. Yeah, this is so present for all of
It's
us.
up for all of us, isn't it? Yeah,
Hmm.
there's so many things about it. It's the economy, it's threat to one's own health, it's loved ones, it's people dying uh, in large numbers. There's so much that's there to trigger us. I think the important thing is the course is designed for a world that seems to produce fear. So from its standpoint, this may be a special time, but it's because it's more of the usual. It's just the dial's been turned up. And everything in the course helps us deal with a world that seems to make us afraid. Everything. For instance, the lesson today, if you're on the calendar here, is I believe it's 93 today. Light and joy and peace abide in me. And that's talking about how no matter what I do, I still remain pure. Well, that's true of no matter what's done to me. I still remain pure with light and joy and peace in me. Everything you read in the course can be applied. So I would say keep the book open and just read it and apply. As this has been, we're several weeks into being hyper aware of this now. And as I read the course each day, I'm struck by how each day there are things that directly apply.
Yeah, and we've been coming back to these three habits again and again in our conversations in these text gatherings about how do we protect our mind from all the fear that's out there? How do we ask for guidance and know that what we're hearing is the Holy Spirit? And then how do we use the strength that we gather from those first two to go out in the world as more loving beings to help and be that safety for other people who are afraid? So this is an ongoing thing, and it's not something that you can just answer in a minute while I move on to the next question.
It's a
So,
multifaceted thing because the course ultimately is a way of life.
mhm.
It's
So
not
keep
like a,
coming back to the conversations that we're
yeah.
having and stay a community.
I mean, I've written about 5 pieces at this point that are designed to sort of from the course, address the current crisis. And you could keep going because it's not a push this one button kind of thing.
Robert says, lesson 183 says there is only one question and one solution. Can you please talk about that?
Yeah, well, that's a frequent theme in the course, and it's kind of the main theme of lessons 79 and 80. Um, there is one problem, ultimately, it's the problem of separation. There is one solution, which in the course, the main way it's expressed is forgiveness. But it's important to realize that that one problem has many facets to it, and that one solution has many facets to it. And we need to understand both sides of that. The fact that there's only one problem. My plumbing is not really, it's not the problem. I don't have a plumbing issue right now, but anyway. Uh, but there is a tremendous desire to try to boil the course down to something really, really, really simple. And I think that desire, which I see everywhere, and I've seen it for many, many years, it has basically demolished the course in terms of our real understanding of what it really is. So yeah, there's one problem, but it's got many facets to it. It's not just fear. It's egotism. It's attack. It's
Specialness.
it's specialness. It's all kinds of things, you know. And there is one solution, yes, but the way I think about it is, say there's one big circular room and 50 doorways around the perimeter. They're different doorways, but they're all a doorway into the same room. And that image helps me understand that the course is simple but not simplistic.
Okay. Rosalie says, uh, I facilitate a course group and I'm finding it challenging to be authentic and uplifting when I'm feeling vulnerable and scared every time I need to leave the house to shop for necessities. Any advice?
Well, I mean, there are challenges that for each of us it's almost like we've got this nice holy wall, and I mean it in the best sense. And there are some waves that are big enough that they're going to get over the wall. And we just have to do our best. I don't have any close family members or friends who are currently infected and at great risk for their health. When I do, it's going to feel different to me. All I can say is, spend your time in the morning with the course, reading, digesting, ideally doing your practice, praying and meditating and asking for guidance, and try to keep that going all through the day, because that's how you'll be strong enough for the challenges.
Yeah, and I would also just add that I don't think in this time what people are looking for is for you to come into the group and be uplifted.
Mm.
I think this is a sad moment for the world. We are collectively experiencing a crisis, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be somber about it. And I couldn't agree more with what you just said, Robert, about the way in which we move through these times with grace and unity is to lean on our practice, and that's what gives us the strength to not fall apart. And so yeah.
Yeah, be honest and be real about what you're feeling, and also hopefully have something to tell your group about how you're addressing that with the course.
Oh, someone's asking a very big question. What's the difference between the Circle of Atonement and the Foundation for Inner Peace versions of the course? Why are there two translations? Do you have like a place that I could point him to?
There's
Okay,
got to
so
be places on our website,
The
right? I
the
mean,
simple the simple 30-second answer is there are 45,000 words of restored text in the complete and annotated edition that were in Helen Schuckman's original notebooks that do not appear in the Foundation for Inner Peace version. That and Robert and his team created footnotes that clarify difficult passages, and there are also 33 cameo essays in the back of the complete edition that applied Jesus's guidance to Helen and Bill's life. So there's just different features to
yeah,
it.
and the other thing besides the words that have been put back is a lot of the words, a lot of the sentences that remained got edited, and so we went back to the original notes.
Yeah. Okay. So can you explain sentence 3 in chapter 5, section 6, paragraph 14? What does it mean to purify forms of the past? Is that where it's talking about purified thoughts?
Where's my book?
Okay, let me look it up. I'll find it. You answer the next question.
Okay.
I was thinking that this social distancing is like the aim of the workbook is first to unplug from engaging in all the worldly activity and going more inside. Are we somehow forced to do that now? Can you please comment?
Well, I think that, I mean, the aim of the workbook is to give us moments of unplugging so that we can come back into our day with a different state of mind and act from that different state. I would say that we should take advantage of this time. We should take advantage and spend more time with the course, spend more time in meditation and prayer, spend more time doing our practice. This is a great time for that. So it doesn't force us. No, we can just watch TV and eat potato chips. But ideally, we take advantage of the opportunity here.
Okay, so this sentence that Christine's talking about is about the blessed residue. It's the purpose of the atonement is to save the past in purified form only.
Right, right, yeah. It's just the purpose of the atonement is that you save the love from your past, the love that you gave, and later on he'll say the love that was given you. That's the only thing you should remember as you think about the past, and it's the only thing your mind should still be supporting about the past.
We are not going to get through all of
I
these
know,
questions.
I know.
Can maybe we should do this again? Can you guys save your questions and we'll do this for the next review when we get through
It's going to
chapter
be a
6.
while. It's going to be a
So
while.
how
We
do we
should
handle this?
we
We
should
can.
just make more time
You want to stay
for
on now or
questions. well, we can stay on for a bit. If people have to go, they have to go. But why don't we stay on for a bit? But we should be, our original guidance about these was to really have a hefty Q&A component
Yeah.
each day. So I feel like,
Let's stay on for another 15 minutes or so and try and
okay,
get through these. And if you have to go, it's perfectly fine. But if you have a
yeah,
question and you want it answered, I'd like to do that.
yeah, okay.
So Peggy said, well, Catherine says this all sounds so easy. So why is it so difficult to attain? The ego is very strong in us.
Yeah, I mean, the course says we've spent eons rehearsing and rehearsing and repeating the ego's lessons, so they're deeply, deeply ingrained. And when something's deeply ingrained, that's the rut your mind runs along. So we all experience it as hard. I certainly do. At the same time, it delivers a kind of release that normal worldly solutions just don't.
And it also feels like it ties back to what we were saying before about why is it so difficult? Well, why are we still choosing it right now?
Yeah,
We just
yeah,
continue to choose it while saying it's difficult, and those things are related. Okay, so Peggy says the Course says that illness is just a belief, and I believe the Course, but I live with somebody who does not follow the Course. How do I respect and live the Course while also respect the other person's concerns about illness? It's a good question.
yeah. Well, I mean, the best of course students are not bulletproof when it comes to illness. So respect where you are actually at, wherever that is. And I mean, the course is all about, it's about forgiving and loving others, but you can't love someone without respecting them. One of the things the course talks about a lot in relation to other people is honoring them. So to love them is also to honor them. And so, yeah, that's how you live the course is you honor the person you're living with, whatever that means.
Okay, Liliana says, I happened to read this morning about being used by the ego, relationships can become its greatest weapon to keep us from heaven. Can you elaborate? Heaven.
Heaven.
I know, I
Well,
thought she was going into the relationship piece of
right,
it,
yeah, me
but yeah.
too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, heaven in the course is the ultimate state where we are one with God, where we are pure spirit, where there's no boundaries, where we're all literally infinite, which who can wrap their heads around that? There's no forms, there's no trees or hills or flowers or clouds. Um, it's a state we can't currently comprehend, but from the course's standpoint, it's the only thing that's real. And we're all there right now. We're just asleep while we're there. And in our sleep, we're dreaming that we're somewhere else, Earth, and we're dreaming that we're someone else. We're dreaming we're human beings. But right now, from the course's standpoint, we're in heaven, just like in your dreams at night, you're really in bed.
Okay. George says, Robert, what is your thinking on the seeming conflict between the teaching and the manual, which says that we should not include reincarnation in teaching the course, yet the text makes more than a few implications that many lives are how things work?
Yeah, and there are those implications. But, with the CE, we have this section in chapter 5, which we didn't get to cover in these classes, called The Question of Karma, chapter 5, section 7. And he deals with reincarnation head on in that section in a way that is very, very much like the section 24 in the manual. They are like bookends. So he does consider reincarnation to be a non-essential element in terms of our salvation, and therefore he doesn't really include it in the course. There are hints of it, and he talked openly to Helen and Bill about past lives. He wasn't subtle with them. At the same time, having little hints at different places in the text is different than having it as a formal teaching that the course promotes. On that level, it's very clear. So, yeah, there are hints in there, but if you're a course student who doesn't believe in reincarnation, the course thinks that you can be just as good of a course student as those who do. It just doesn't matter.
But he acknowledges the existence of past lives.
He especially did separately to Helen and Bill. Yeah, there's no getting around it. Yeah, but from his standpoint, like, it just doesn't matter. It's not the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Monique says, I commence my morning with this in mind. I have a lovely meditation and feel quite connected. The next thing I know, it's 4 p.m. and I've forgotten everything. Yeah. Monique, you're not alone.
Well, see, the point of the workbook, and I think we all tend to ignore the workbook instructions, even though it's a workbook. Um, the point of the workbook is to train you to be remembering not just every hour, but several times in between the hour, and even times in between those, whenever you have even the smallest loss of peace. The workbook is there to train you to be remembering ultimately all the time. And to get to all the time, you have to start with, every so often during the day, and close the gaps more and more.
Yeah, and you won't forget at 4 if you have set timers, if you set your reminders, if you have your little sticky of your practice line. I mean, it's just, if you're constantly reminding yourself throughout the day by following the practice instructions,
Yeah.
you won't have forgotten at 4.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways we can have aids, but it's a mind training course. We're meant to be undergoing a training. It's just that we've all collectively forgotten that, I think.
Molly says, is it possible to get closed captions for these meetings? Not right now. We're a staff of 2, and you're looking at the staff.
We've got more of than a staff of 2. We have, we don't want to exclude our crucial other staff.
We're a full-time staff of 2.
Yeah.
With
Yeah, the full-timers are in front of you right now.
indispensable team members who help. Okay, Kimmy says,
how would we even do that?
I'm sorry?
How would we even do that? I don't know how you get that kind of
Well, we have a volunteer, Joe, who is a mighty companion who does transcripts. So that would be the closest that we could.
Yeah, closed caption though, that's different. So anyway,
There is
we'll
a
talk
way,
about it.
yeah, there's a way to do it on YouTube, but it requires transcripts.
Okay.
We don't have.
We'll talk about it and conclude that we can't do it, but we'll still talk about it.
Yeah, and we're still talking about it when people were waiting to get their questions answered.
Okay, sorry.
Kimmy says, at the start of chapter 5, doing my review for today, it strikes me that the Holy Spirit helps us heal our minds and see our brother as ourselves. The first sentence in C5 says to heal, chapter 5 says to heal is to make happy. And with the virus, isn't this an opportunity to heal more minds? And we can demonstrate this to our brothers by sharing happiness in light of the fear.
That's absolutely true. I think trying to be real miracle workers in this time is so needed. We've all been assigned jobs in this time, and are we opening our ears to what those are? That guy that was in the Army that had his NDE and talked about it being an Eagle Scout, his book about his experience continues, where then he goes, after he recovers, he goes to Europe and is helping out in the liberation of concentration camps. And he finds a guy there who is strong and upright and healthy. He's not emaciated, and he's like the guy all the different warring factions in the concentration camps turn to, and he's just a fountain of helpfulness. He rests less than the soldiers who just got there, and he found that the guy had been there for years. It was just because he had a different attitude. He could be a light to everybody in trying times.
Okay.
Too many questions.
Too many questions, and there's so much I would want to say on that, having been a student of Viktor Frankl. Anyway,
right, yeah.
Gordon says, why? Oh, it's your favorite question. Why does the course not mention anything about the soul?
Well, the soul was mentioned a lot in the original dictation. So that got edited out, and Jesus does say in the clarification of terms, basically that the word soul is not used hardly at all. But there was a lot said about the soul, and there's 2 senses of soul in those early references, and there's quite a few. One is that soul is synonymous with our spirit, with the part of us that is our true nature, that never left heaven, that never fell asleep, that's always perfect, etc. But there's another sense of the word soul um, that you see under other headings later in the course just a few times. And that is as some pure spiritual element in us that never fell in the sense of never engaged in ego itself, but in some sense got pulled down and imprisoned by our identification with the ego. So there's a kind of a soul as an in-between thing. And I think that was pictured in Helen's very first vision of this holy priestess, presumably an element in herself, that was in chains and shackled. And I think that's that other meaning of soul. There's a divine element in us that is kind of in chains and shackled while still remaining pure and holy.
Yeah, and what he said about the soul in relation to Bill was really fascinating too, where it would demand freedom. Do you want to just touch on that very briefly?
Yeah, Bill made some kind of Freudian slip, and Jesus said that Freudian slip didn't come from his ego, but came from his soul, a soul that was regaining enough strength to request freedom and would ultimately demand it. So you get a sense of that element in Bill is being unshackled, is growing stronger, and is coming out in certain things Bill says.
I love that, because to me, it is just an encapsulation of the spiritual journey. There is something in us that we feel and it wants to come out, and it like requires our own development in order to do it. I just relate it to Bill so much on that level.
Mm.
I think that is true for many of us beyond just him. Okay, Kim says, when we are responding to someone's fear about COVID-19 by emphasizing the strength of God within them in our minds, how do we let them know we hear their fear without dismissing it or buying into it? Good question.
Yeah, I think we just are helpful to them. I think what happens is we often get into a mode where we think the best we can do, and I know her question doesn't sound like this, but I'm just speaking more generally, where we feel like the best we can do is get kind of preachy about these great truths. And a lot of times it's very insensitive. It is often just there to quell our own fear in the face of their suffering. And I just think just being helpful and reassuring in a language that they can understand, without like taking off our Course in Miracles hat in a sense, not in the sense of what we believe inwardly, but just being there for
Yeah.
people.
We've been talking a lot about this middle ground between some of the things that you're hearing in the course community and spiritual circles of there is no body, there is no COVID-19, therefore we don't have to worry about it, and the fear that causes us to run out and panic buy toilet paper. And there is a strength that comes in the middle lane, and it comes through those three habits that we've been talking so much about protecting your mind, asking for guidance, and being a miracle worker in the world, like expressing love. And so if you can kind of stay in that middle lane, we're all going to get through this together. But if you collapse into the fear, which is so easy to do, then we're not.
And if you protect against your fear by just trying to be overly dismissive, that's not it either. We have to kind of hang on to the fact that there's the real truth, there's God, there's the Christ in everybody, and there's the forms of this world. And hopefully we can hang on to both sides at once and be appropriate on the form level while remembering the real truth.
Yeah, that's well said. Someone is saying, are there any plans to make a concordance? Frequently don't know where to find verses and related passages. I want a concordance really bad. A concordance and a lectionary
I
for
think
the
the best we
evening.
can do is urge them to get the Kindle and they can do searches.
Yeah, that's the
And it's
best
like
that we
$10.
can do for now. Full-time staff of 2. All right. Please give the resource for Bill's flu shot guidance. You can find that at circleofa.org/coronavirus. We did a Sunday gathering on this, and the guidance is there.
And
And
people are
there's a
popping in.
handout too.
People are popping in saying that it's easy to do searches on the Kindle.
Yeah, it is easy to do searches on the Kindle. Okay. Lynn says, aren't successes and failures covered by ego thinking, thus not valid to who we are? I think that's your successes and failures.
I didn't quite follow. You,
Question.
you cut out just for a second.
Okay, so Lynn is saying, aren't successes and failures covered by ego thinking and thus not valid to who we are? So it's speaking to that earlier
No,
question.
no, because what he's saying in that passage is you've gotten it wrong. You have successes, you have retreats, meaning you go backwards, you go forwards, and you go backwards, and you've just gotten the two confused. So he's not saying there's no such thing. He's saying your way of deciding which is which is incorrect.
Gregory has a question about angels. And just in the interest of time, Gregory, we've done a podcast on angels. And it's if you go to circleofa.org, I feel like a broken record, and click on resources, under that, you'll see podcasts. And when you click on podcasts, you'll see we did one on angels. It has a beautiful discussion guide with the course's passages that reference angels. And that was a really good discussion.
Did
It
we
was one of,
do it? Is our in our current podcast series? Is there one?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I wouldn't be talking about it if we didn't.
Sorry. Okay, you got me.
Okay, so someone says, isn't there a section in the manual for teachers about judgment?
Yeah. Yeah. There's section 10 and 11 is kind of about judgment too. So, but the judgment, see, there's different senses of judgment, and the judgment in manual section 10 is really about judging what do I do? And that's different than judgment in the sense of, intolerant thinking. So we just have to understand that it's a single word that covers different senses, like so many English words. So what did Gregory ask about angels?
He asks specifically about the workbook epilogue that says God's angels hover near and all about. His love surrounds you, and of this to be sure, I will never leave you comfortless. What else does the course say about angels? So
Oh, I see.
we
Yeah, yeah. It's good to play into the thing because in the end, quite a bit is said, even though there's only like about 15 references.
Andy says maybe this is a time to work on trust, and that's true.
Absolutely.
The manual has a section on trust that is really
That's
helpful.
the whole foundation for the teacher of God's personality.
Yeah. So Lynn
Good
says,
point.
can't we take assurance from the fact that we're participating here together, that we're awake and aware enough to choose? Isn't this a great escape from our patterns of ego control? Yes.
Okay, then we've gone like way
Three,
over. We should.
three more. No, we're almost
Okay,
done. We're
okay,
almost done.
okay.
Sorry. But people were dropping off.
Yeah,
And if you
okay,
have to go, go. But if you have a question and you're still here, I want to make sure that it gets answered. There's
okay,
only
okay,
three more.
okay,
I'm sorry, Robert.
okay. I'm just concerned about people like being like, oh God, they're going so long. Anyway,
Then they can go. Um,
I
Samantha
guess they're
says
free now, aren't they?
Samantha says I have a fear that heaven may be boring.
Oh, I just wrote a
Oh,
piece on that,
I
which we
love
haven't
this.
published.
I love this
We haven't
so much.
published that
It's such a
piece.
good question.
What are we going to do with those?
We're going to talk about it at length, but not now. All right. So based on the course, it seems very peaceful and peaceful eternity, yet being wholly loved and joyful is appealing. But what then? I pray for 1,000 lifetimes to shed more light and remember more. But do you fear the day of eternity? We've had so many discussions
Yeah,
on whether we aspire to heaven, because it doesn't seem all that appealing. Like your body disappears and you're just engulfed in this love. On one hand, it seems amazing, as Samantha's saying, but on another, it's like
I
kind of
think
like my
I think
independence.
the really quick thing is you have to understand it's an infinitely larger state of mind. It's not just like this same state where you feel better. It's an infinitely larger state. So if you imagine like one of those what are the knobs that you where you got the dimmer switches. Yeah, sorry. So imagine a dimmer switch, and every bit you turn it up, you get more aware, you get more peaceful, you get more joyful, you feel more loved and loving. And imagine that switch just keeps getting turned up and up and up and up and up. And after a while, your mind stretches out. And after a while, there's no more boundaries. And you can't, people who've experienced that state, they say, well, the very best thing that you ever experienced on earth is like a match. And that state is like the sun. So boring is precisely the wrong word.
And that's why people who have NDEs who often say, I didn't want to come back.
Well, I think they almost always say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they choose to come back because of family obligation or friends or whatever. Sometimes they just get forced to come back, but I think they almost always say, "Gee, I wish I could have stayed."
Two more.
Okay.
Can we can we get comfort from the Course's teaching that we're but to remember what happened during the tiny tick of time and are looking back on it? This has to apply to the virus in that it's actually over. How do we apply that?
Well, the course does say in several different places that this whole thing is really over, and we're like at the end of it, looking back on it. Like this is the ultimate life review, you could say, where we're reviewing something that really is over. And I think the comfort in that is just the idea that all the challenges that we face ahead of us outwardly in terms of our own development, getting past stuff in our own ego, all of that is actually past us. We're at the end, we're at the finish line dreaming we're still on the race. And that's comforting.
And yet at the same time we have free will to choose our next steps when we're here. So
I
it's both.
think I think there's two perspectives going on that are totally different. One is we're in this now, it's happening now, we're making novel choices. There's no way to predict what those will be. And then there's some sense in which we're also at the end, after it all got chosen, and looking back, which I find really confusing.
Because we've just covered a part of the text where Jesus says, even I don't know what you're going to do next. And yet at the same time, it's all over and we're looking back on it. So those
Yeah,
two things exist at once and they seem very paradoxical.
they are.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. So we
Robert,
got
thank
through them
you.
all. We
Thank you.
should make sure we leave more time, shouldn't we?
Yeah,
Every
we
day.
should. We should. Thank you so much for staying over. And thanks to all of you who stuck with us.
Who stayed?
And
Yeah.
we hope that this was helpful and really, really appreciate all of your questions. And I'm so glad we got to answer all of them for you today.
And thank
So
you for joining us.
we
Really
we
got a
will,
lot of people.
yeah, Michael says, this is my first time attending. Thank you for
Mm,
providing this opportunity. I hope to
mm.
join you often. We hope you will join us often. And please share that link, circleofa.org/text gathering, with anyone who is a course student that you feel could benefit from coming together like this. We will get through this together, and we really appreciate your time. All right. See you tomorrow.
Thank you all. Bye, everybody.
Bye.